What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com for another edition of our Three Things Post-Game podcast. I'm Jacob Turner. Joining me from Kenan Stadium, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. AJ, I was in Kenan Stadium not too long ago, a little bit colder than you were sitting in the stands tonight. It was a little bit of a chilly evening in Chapel Hill. Yeah, I believe it. You got the open air behind you, too, man. You're probably freezing right now. Yeah, it was cold out there today, man. No doubt about it. Coldest game of the year for sure. And ultimately another game that Carolina fans probably wish they might have stayed home for. In the end, Carolina losing 35-30 to NC State, fourth in a row to the Wolfpack, and we'll dive into it here in a second. Is it was a completely different second half performance from the Wolfpack all the way around, even though the game did open up on both sides of the ball in the second half. We're going to talk that. We're going to talk the cheap shot on Rucker, because, I mean, you just call a spade on it. If people see the replay, it was a bit of a cheap shot. I don't think I'm reaching when I'm saying that. We'll talk about the brawl at the end of the game and a couple other things as well. We're not going to go too stat heavy on this, because I told AJ off camera, I think the only stat line Carolina fans really care about is that 35-30 score line. So, but yeah, there's no point in really diving in to that. But AJ, let's just start with the game itself before we dive into some of that extracurricular stuff. We're going to do a separate podcast on some other things later as well, so y'all stay tuned for that. But yeah, man, I mean, tale of two halves in a lot of ways. And I think what it comes down to, though, AJ, is the stat line of 373 yards for NC State in the second half, scored on all 6 possessions. I mean, that's the ball game for you right there. An offense on Carolina's side that struggled but did play a little bit better in the second half, scored 24 points themselves. But I'm looking at that fourth quarter box score, AJ, 22 points for the Wolfpack, including the go-ahead touchdown late on. I tweeted out, AJ, it was a very fitting way for Carolina to lose in a lot of ways with the defense. You know, Will Hardy's an inch away from maybe intercepting that ball or potentially doing something. Marcus Allen's right there, and they can't do it. Noah Rogers' only catch of the game comes in that situation. Again, that was kind of what galvanized State to score and ultimately win 35-30. So a lot of little things you can nitpick at, but at the end of the day, AJ, we've seen Carolina lose some tough matchups to NC State over the last few years, and I think this one, I don't know if it's quite top of the list, but it's close.
You saw the real good for Carolina in Omarion Hampton, who was awesome today. I don't know.
It was the offense, really.
157. He had the shovel pass again. That shovel pass has worked twice now. Worked at Florida State about a month ago. I guess it was about a month ago. And then it worked here tonight, and it put them up. But, of course, the immediate response in the press box is they scored too soon. Yeah. So State had enough time. Look, we also saw the worst. Carolina's defense in the second half was at its absolute worst. I thought some guys made some plays. There were some good efforts on balls, but it was really bad. An NC State team that is not really good offensively and was horrific in the first half was a machine in the second half. I think C.J. Bailey had 19 yards passing, and then on their first possession of the second half, he completed a 37-yard pass. And like doubled his yardage, his output for the day already. And then he was in a groove. And in the first half, they were trying to beat Carolina a little bit with the legs, and it wasn't working. The Tar Heels did a really nice job defensively. In the second half, they said, CJ, chuck this thing around. And he did so many big plays. And Carolina was just really bad defensively. We've seen it before. It is, I don't want to say it's fitting. I'd say it's telling that the last half of the Mac Brown Part 2 tenure showed a defense that had been at the core of all the problems and why the Mac Brown tenure is out now, is over.
Yeah.
It's not been the offense, it's been the defense. It wasn't the offense today. Jacoby Criswell played well in the second half. He finally made some really difficult downfield throws, and those were tight balls. But the defense let Carolina down in 2021. In 2022, 2023, here in 2024. It was pretty good in 2019 when I had a bunch of Larry Fedora's guys and no depth, and Jay Bateman was doing his thing. In 2020, they had a couple of rough patches. The fourth quarter in the Orange Bowl was a rough patch. Virginia was a rough game for them. But what was the ailment of this program in MAC Part 2 showed up in the second half, and no pun intended, put its flag in the soil and said, we're the culprit. We're the main culprit. And, of course, later on there was a real flag attempted to be put in the soil, and we'll talk about that. But there's not much more you can say. I mean, the era's over, and Mac tried with Bateman, who was the up-and-coming dude, and it didn't work. Mac tried with Gene Chizik, who was the ballyhoo guy whose massive image is still hanging right outside Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, and they may build a statue of him.
Yeah.
Didn't work. And now he brought in Jeff Collins, who has had a lot of success as a DC, 2 stops in the SEC at Mississippi State and Florida, and he was big time. I'm not going to say it didn't work with him because I thought they had some pretty good bouts of good football, even late in the year, but it didn't work last week in Chestnut Hill at all, and it didn't work in the second half today. So I guess you can kind of say it didn't work there either because his head coach got fired. So defense has be damned in part 2, and it's over now.
Yeah, it's over. Ultimately it is, and there's reasons for that. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it at another time as well. But I want to just focus on the game a little bit more. I mentioned that cheap shot on K'Mon Rucker in the first half. I mean, I don't want to say that K'Mon going out, maybe change the trajectory of the defense. We've seen this defense play its best football when K'Mon's played, but we could also look at last weekend against Boston College. AJ, he was on the field for that one, and Carolina didn't look very good either. So I think it definitely played a factor in it for sure. But, it wasn't like the defense just went straight downhill after Rucker went out. I think, if anything, it galvanized the team. And being in the stands, that was the moment when the switch flipped on of like, okay, this game's getting chippy again. This is what we expect when North Carolina and NC State meet. Before that, it was a little, both teams trying to work into it. There was moments of chippiness, but as soon as Rucker went down, I think Jabari Ritzie started jawing across the field. Des Evans started jawing across the field as he was being tended to, and it was a chippy game from here on out and made it an entertaining one. I thought, but from a neutral perspective, I guess if you're a Carolina fan, it wasn't very entertaining on how it ended, but it did make the game a little bit more interesting, and that ultimately fed into the end of the game, the brawl, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think some people could look at it and say, the Rucker injury was a turning point. I don't view it like that. I just think it took, but what it did, AJ, is it took the tone of the game to the level that we've seen it in previous years, and it completely changed that. So I thought that was
it happened 5 minutes and 31 seconds into the game.
Yeah.
He played
that was the trigger. That was the gunpowder. That was the fuse that ignited everything.
I think that was our first rivalry moment of the day. Mm-hmm. And it went for a while, and then the referees basically threw a flag on everybody on both rosters, which was the
I've never seen that before.
They were trying to get a hold of this. I mean, I don't think cheap shots are good, but I think chirping and scuffs and things like that are good in rivalry games. That's what it's about. Mm-hmm. The hit on K'Mon was a disgusting play. It's fortunate that he didn't waste his knee. Mm-hmm. He has a fractured fibula, and he may or may not require surgery, he told us afterward. And it's going to affect his timeline now for the NFL Combine and things like that. So it's very possible that this cheap shot cost K'Mon Rucker some money.
Of course, yeah.
And it's disgusting. If I'm a coach and I see that, I pull a guy, but, it's war down there. Too many football coaches have a militaristic mentality, and they run things in a militaristic way, and they do believe it's war when it's not. There still should be a degree of sportsmanship, and that was a BS play. Yeah. And I'm not saying it because I cover North Carolina and I publish a site that covers North Carolina. I covered NC State for a long time too. I broke the Chuck Amato got fired story. I was knee deep in a lot of stuff over there. And if I was covering NC State, I would say the exact same thing about that play. It was a BS cheap shot. And Rucker's fortunate that he still has a football career in front of him, because he was on the ground for about 4 or 5 minutes. And then they took him into the tunnel. And a lot of us are like, holy crap. I mean, that could be a career ender. And then at the end of the first quarter, between the first quarter and second quarter, I don't know if you noticed, Max spent the whole time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say the B word. I'll say the other word, belly aching at the officials, complaining vehemently about that play. Yeah. Howard Sampson had a very unfortunate play, the sort of get you back play later. And I believe the NC State player got injured, but that was nowhere near as egregious. It was intentional. The play is on this side of the field. Mm-hmm. K'Mon's over here. You don't need to do that. Mm-hmm. You don't need to, you can shade him. You don't need to lay him out even. Mm-hmm. And you sure as hell don't go down to his knees. So the Tar Heels responded by stepping up for him. And I asked K'Mon after the game, first of all, he'd seen it on film, and he's like, I don't want to really comment in that sense. You could clearly tell that he knew it was a dirty play.
Oh, yeah.
And then I asked him about the play, his teammates stepping up for him. He said that's what they did. And Kevin Hester was out there. Malachi Hamrick was out there as well. Javari had to be held back. I thought he was going to go to the state.
Oh, yeah.
And, hey, that made it entertaining for us, but not Cayman's injury. It'd be nice if these teams would come out and have that kind of hate for each other without a dirty play triggering it. I think that's part of the problem with North Carolina is they needed a dirty play to kind of get that level of chip up. They should have had that level of chip, in my personal opinion. But I also understand that there are extenuating circumstances this week and today. And they responded well because defensively they shut down State. And they were vicious. There were some big-time hits by Carolina's defense, more than we've seen all year. But in the second half, whatever they had in the first half and took it to the locker room, it stayed in the locker room. It didn't show up in the second half. They were not a vicious team. They were a terrible team on defense in the second half.
Yeah, predictable. And like I said, it was a very on-brand ending in a lot of ways because of how the game ended, because of the defense giving up that late drive, and because of, again, it just felt like on offense too, man, just an over-reliance once again on Amari and Hampton of kind of like, hey, we need your individual talent to go win us a game, not us being a great unit or being a great team on the offensive side of the ball. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, again, I don't want to say predictable in the way it went down, but I know some people, I was kind of sitting around, and as soon as Hampton scored late on, AJ, the conversation wasn't, man, what a great touchdown. We're going to win this game now. The Carolina fans around me were, oh, man, we scored way too early. And that's just what the mindset was. And that's been a theme with just how poor the defense has been under the Mac Brown 2.0 era. And heck, going back even further than that, let's not forget it's not just a Mac Brown issue when it comes to defenses at North Carolina in recent years. So, yeah, man.
Very quickly, I know we're going to go into something else. I want to give a big shout out to Amari and Hampton.
Yeah.
Consecutive 1,500-yard seasons. The only 4 that have done it in the ACC this century are also Dalvin Cook, Travis Etienne, and Lamar Jackson. That's pretty good company to be in. Yeah. So kudos to Amari. He deserves some props. I was hoping we might get to talk to him, but he wouldn't have said, because of the way the game played out, I understand.
He wouldn't have said much, no. But last thing real quick, AJ, because we're going to go shorter on this. Again, I know a lot of Carolina fans don't want to relive what they just witnessed for the last few hours, but the brawl. I don't want to necessarily use the word brawl. I guess that's maybe an accurate description of it. I didn't see as many guys fighting than what we saw after the Fedora in his tenure. That felt a little bit more like a brawl than tonight. But you know a little bit more. I watched the whole thing from where I was sitting. I saw J.J. Jones run away with the flag and chuck it in the stands, which kind of not in the stands,
like a javelin.
It was hilarious to watch. But that kind of resulted in another fight over here. But correct me if I'm wrong. You might have a better understanding from what I've seen. I've seen some videos of people laying on top of each other and brawling. I saw DeAndre Boykins having to be held back, for 10 minutes after the brawl was over. He seemed pretty upset. And from what I understand, they tried to plant the field and they tried to plant the flag in midfield, which was an issue a couple years ago. Carolina wouldn't let that happen, and we're kind of like, State's going to have to leave the middle of the field, or we're going to have to fight them off of it. That's what it felt and looked like to me, but maybe you know more.
When State did it a couple of years ago, I took pictures and tweeted it out, and Carolina had already been off the field.
Yeah.
So this time they were waiting, and they protected that turf. I thought State tried to do it too soon. And what JJ did was kind of funny, and I'm surprised it didn't escalate more there. The people down there on the field, the adults down there on the field did a nice job keeping that thing from becoming a full-on brawl. Because I actually tweeted, I said, a brawl is breaking out. And I thought it was going to be ugly. First thing I did was look to both end zones to see how many police officers were there, because I thought they were going to need them. And it was bad. It was pretty ugly. Jordan Kramer she was right there on the field. She has a video that she tweeted out. It's probably gone viral. It will give you an indication of what it was like when you were down there in the mix. Then JJ left. He comes back out of the tunnel onto the field without his helmet, and he's looking for someone to scrap with.
I know.
And NC State's players were doing flips in the end zone. And they were flipping on like literal flips. Like
it was unreal. It was an unreal thing.
And then the NC State cheerleaders got inside the heels on this end zone down here in the blue zone, and they filled up the L.
Yeah, I watched that too.
I mean, they were taunting like crazy, and I think it's great for a rivalry. Yeah. First thing Mac Brown basically said in the press conference or I should say in his opening statement, because there was no press conference, he didn't take questions. The first thing he said was, hey, 2 years ago, I thought it was classless and disrespectful. So he's saying it was again for them to do that. And that's what this – look, I'm fine. Let the players sort it out. If Carolina's that pissed off about it, do something, beat them for a change, right?
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Right?
So I like this. I like the chippiness in a rivalry because that's what it should all be about. If it's poor sportsmanship, I think after the game, I don't like poor sportsmanship during the game. Chippy stuff to me is different than poor sportsmanship. Cheap shots like the hit on Cayman Rucker, that's poor sportsmanship and is disgraceful. Putting a flag in the field, that's not disgraceful to me. That's challenging. We won 4 in a row. We did it 2 years ago. We're going to do it again, and we're still going to try to do it. That's NC State telling Carolina, you're not worthy of us. We own you.
Yeah.
And Carolina responded by trying to stop them. So now they got a chance next year to go to Raleigh and beat them with whoever will be the head coach.
Yeah, and Carolina fans will be praying that happens. 4 straight losses to NC State, only one winning Keenan over State. And you mentioned this in the football show since the Geo return all those years ago, and that was COVID. So it's been a long time since Carolina fans have.
They have not beaten NC State in this stadium in front of their fans since the Geo return.
12 years ago.
One win was in COVID, and there was nobody here.
It's unbelievable, man. And again, another factor in terms of not winning enough games.
Knows how to find a way to lose to NC State.
I've seen a few the last 4 in a row. I mean, last year they were
1-yard Hail Mary by Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
that was the 2 years before the Geo game. I think that was 2010.
Yeah,
I can't remember what year it was, but the State owns them. They put the red pants on, the white jerseys, and the red helmets. They come in here and they own them.
Yeah. I mean, brawl's fine and fighting's fine after the game, but like you said, I mean, the easiest way to avoid that is just to beat him in the first place. And Carolina hasn't been able to do that in quite a while, and also in those 4 losses in a row. AJ, I don't want to use the word invented ways to lose in some of them, but we've seen quite a few spectacular losses for the Tar Heels in 3 of those 4. I think with last year being last year was the only exception where they were just clearly not nearly as good as
they find ways to lose to NC State. That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line of it. And I think it's the only thing we need to say to end this one off. We're going to do a separate podcast as well. I won't even tell you guys what it's about, so stay tuned for it. You guys can go check that out or find us on our YouTube channel as well. I'm going to tease it so maybe we get a couple more people heading on over there now that football season is done. And by the way, too, Mac Brown announced that he will not coach in the bowl game. We'll talk about that in a separate pod a little bit too.
Yeah, we had that on the site a few days ago, but
it
was on premium.
Confirmed, I should say.
Yeah. And by the way, we have a special right now.
Mm-hmm. Sign up.
75% off Black Friday special. It's $2.08 a month. I mean, come on, guys. We got coaching search stuff going on. Got lots of basketball things. We got a ton of inside information. We put a lot of inside information, 100% accurate inside information about the coaching situation all week long, and in our message boards, just the communication and dialogue. Other than it's been a little bit nasty in some respects the last couple of days because people are arguing about this potential coach and that potential coach, but by and large, it's pretty damn good. It's a good place to hang out. $2.08 a month for a 1-year subscription. If you give a crap about Carolina athletics and accurate information and a fun place to hang out, it's a no-brainer to come sign up.
Yeah, especially with the coaching search and everything going on right now in basketball season, obviously heavy underway.
If you sign up right now and you go check the post I made yesterday afternoon, that alone's worth it.
Oh, yeah, 100%, man. A lot of intel in there for some very, very, very good sources, to say the least, very close to the situation. So make sure you guys head on over there and sign up. Great time to do so. Again, like AJ said, with the deal going on, links in the description, head on over there and get signed up. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well in our final regular season podcast for it. Heck, will Carolina play in a bowl game? Let TBD. Let's see. This may be our final football 3 things of the season. Too early to tell. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And again, we'll discuss some more of that on a separate podcast. But
from Shreveport.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys watching as always. And we'll see y'all next time, whenever that may be. Thanks.